Hello, I'm Jack and this is Entertainment World, and today I'll be talking about The Batman, which was directed by Matt Reeves, written by Matt Reeves and Peter Craig, and produced by Matt Reeves and Dylan Clark. So Matt Reeves obviously was very tight with this film's involvement. He didn't just direct it, he produced, co-wrote it, and obviously directed it. So this is very much what he wanted to do. It stars Robert Pattinson, Zoe Kravitz, Andy Serkis, Paul Dano, John Turturro, Colin Farrell, Jeffrey Wright. Basically, it just has a really huge cast. That's everybody off the top of my head. If I'm forgetting anyone, sorry. But yes, it has a huge cast. Obviously, big name director as well. Matt Reeves directed the second two films in the recent prequel Planet of the Apes type trilogy, or Origin, even well, not really a prequel because apparently they're not a prequel to anything the previous films, but you know what I mean, those films, that trilogy. And he directed Cloverfield as well, which I love. So I was really excited when this whole trailer came out. DC Fandom, not this year but the year before. And obviously they had the proper main trailer this year as well. And I've been really excited for this film. And honestly, actually no, sorry, yeah, no, the DC Fandom in 2020, and then DC Fandom 2021 with the big main trailer. Anyway, regardless, I've been very much looking forward to this film. Obviously, there was the whole thing where it was originally going to be a Ben Affleck film, written, directed, produced, starred in with Ben Affleck, and ended up being written and directed by Matt Reeves and starring Robert Pattinson. And Ben Affleck's was going to be set in the DCEU, and this one isn't set in the DCEU. So obviously, that's a huge difference in terms of what the film how the film started to what it ended up being. But despite that, and despite being a huge Zack Snyder fan and a Restore the Snyderverse fan, and you know that aspect, and Ben Affleck being a fabulous Batman, probably my favourite. Well, yeah, my favourite Batman. This, or being at least the highest, like, he's the standard, he's the best Batman, he's the great Batman. This is what other people should try and get to. I was really looking forward to, despite those things, and I was looking forward to this despite those things. So anyway, I'll be talking about this film. I'll be starting off negatives first, and then going into positives, because that's how I like to usually do things. This will be a non-spoiler review, and despite the fact, and I'll be doing a spoiler video where it'll be more of a nitpick discussion-y type video. There'll still be quite review elements, but I'll be just talking about little things in detail and what I thought about it and things like that. Whereas this will just be a non-spoiler review. Sorry it's late. I wanted to do it earlier, but I still had to finish my No Way Home spoiler review, or spoiler discussion I should say, which I was very, very, very late on, and I'm sorry about that. And even though I'm tomorrow the film will have come out 2 weeks prior, but I wanted to watch it a few times as well. I wanted to watch it at least twice. I've watched it 3 times now. I'm actually going to watch it again tomorrow. But the reason why is because I didn't know what to think of it the first time I watched it. I knew if I enjoyed it or not. I just didn't know how to take it all in and what to think and that aspect of things, so to do this properly. Anyway, I'll be starting off with it now. Sorry this is late. Just wanted to explain why. But I still wanted to do a non-spoiler video and a spoiler video, regardless of how late it is. So we're going into the details now, and I'll be starting off with the negatives. I just forgot that Peter Starsgaard is in it as well. Just wanted to add that quickly. Anyway, so the first negative I have, well, the thing is the negatives. It's hard to, I don't have any real huge negatives. There's a few things left unanswered, and there's with the film where the film sets something up or something happens in the film, and it leaves it a little bit unanswered, or well, not so much sets up, but there's things in the film where it's sort of okay, what that could have been talked about more and explained a bit more, and there's a few nitpicks and things like that. But other than that, I don't have any huge real negatives. It isn't like there's huge glaring problems with the film, or I wish that was different, I wish this was different, anything like that. It's just little nitpicks, things like that, which will be easier to do in the spoiler thing, because like as I said, they're just little details about things which happen in the film, which will be hard to talk about here. But I will say that there are things this film might lack in compared to certain other Batman films, like The Dark Knight and Batman Begins are very emotional, they're very character-based, they're sort of very the journey of the character, how the character got from this point to that point, and goes very into Bruce Wayne's origins and how the death of his parents really affected him, and that whole message and the symbol, how he got from the scared little boy to the end to becoming Batman. And because obviously this film, at the start of this film, he's already Batman, he's been Batman for 2 years, you don't have that, so you could argue it lacks in emotion compared to something like Batman Begins, The Dark Knight Rises, but I think what it might lack, what you consider it might lack in terms of emotional storytelling, it really makes up with like the detective noir side of it, the showing Batman really is as like the world's greatest detective, the interrogations, the going to different places to talk to different people and find things out. It's just, it makes, where it might lack with that, it makes up with this. Now, that having said, there are some emotional things in the film, and I will get to that in a minute. I just wanted to say it might lack, you might think it lacks compared to the other ones, and I certainly didn't think it did, I don't want to say didn't do as good of a job, because I don't think it was going for that, but it certainly didn't go into as much detail as the Dark Knight trilogy did when it came to the emotional side of things. But as I said, it does make up for that with other things. I just wanted to still say that as one little thing though, so, you know, just to be open and honest about it, that you could argue that it lacks in that, or you could think, you watching it could be like, I don't like it so much because of that. But to me, it was more of an observation than necessarily a negative, but I still wanted to say it here anyway. Now obviously the film is 3 hours long, and in places it does feel 3 hours long. There's no point where I'm bored, or where I'm like, oh god, I want this film to end now, it's dragging, or this is dragging. But it does feel long, you notice the runtime whilst watching it. But having said that, that could just be the first time I watched it. I really needed to pee pretty much throughout the whole film, and I didn't want to miss anything, so I sat through it. And yeah, I was really starting to feel it with the last like 20 minutes of the film. I was like, come on. But yeah, that could be why. Second time and the third time, did I notice it as much? Still a little bit. I still felt like the film was long. Again, that's not me like, oh, this is too long, that's too long, this is boring me. It's not like that. You just, I don't know how to get it across without like saying it's boring, because it's not boring, but you just feel it. You feel like, okay, this is quite long. It's not like, I don't know, it's like something, I don't want to keep comparing Zack Snyder's Justice League, because I feel that's unfair to do, and makes me just sound like a crazy fanboy, which I'm not, despite the fact that's my favourite film. But, you know, Saving Private Ryan, for example, there's a good one, doesn't feel 3 hours long, even though it is pushing that runtime. Whereas this film does feel like it is 3 hours long, even though it's not a negative as such and it's not boring, you just feel it. You do feel like what I am watching is a long film. So I think that's the only way I can sort of put that. It doesn't. The other one I can think of where it does feel like a long film that's not boring would be something like Scarface. You know, so I'm not bored. It's just a long film. The 1983 version. The 1932 version is an hour and a half, and that felt like it was 4 hours long, and it's only an hour and a half. But that's the only way I could sort of describe it. Is it just feels long. It doesn't get boring. It just feels long. And there's a few things in this film that could have done with a bit more explanation, and I won't spoil it. But there's certain things which happen in the film, and although you're like, as a Batman fan, you're like, oh, it's just really cool to see it. You're not 110% sure if that's what it is, because there's an item Batman has in the film, and you're like, that is really cool if that's what I think it is, but the film doesn't specify that that is what he has. Like, I don't want to spoil it, but it's just things like that. There's a few little details where you're like, I think that's that. You could have had a scene explaining it, and you could have maybe used it to the story's advantage had you gone into it more. But that's about it, really. There's a few little things like that where I was like, I wish that was a few more things I wish were explained, or it leaves to question certain other aspects of things. But without going into spoilers, that's all I can really say about it. That's a little bit of a negative, but it's not like a huge glaring, it ruins the film for me, or it detracts from it massively, or anything like that. I do just sit there and think, that could have had a bit more information, or maybe even a scene dedicated to it, or it could have been integrated with the emotional side of the film, or maybe even the detective side of the film. But other than that, it's just a little minor nitpick. So, as I said, this film is just sort of minor little nitpicks, really. There aren't huge glaring flaws with this film which detract from anything in any major degree. So, yeah, that's quite impressive in itself. I'll be now going into the positives though, because I really want to get into that. The entire cast are fantastic. That is not a joke. Literally, the entire cast is fantastic. Everybody from the major players, the big characters, the people with lots of screen time, to the people who are in it for like 4 minutes. Everyone is fantastic. Robert Pattinson is brilliant as Batman, right up there with like Ben Affleck. Like, maybe I prefer Ben Affleck a little bit, but Robert Pattinson is right up there. Honestly, I cannot describe how brilliant Robert Pattinson is. I will say, actually, even though he might not be directly my favourite, he's the one I got like most lost into the character with. I didn't see Robert Pattinson once when I was watching it. The whole time I was watching it, I was like, that's Bruce Wayne or that's Batman. That's it. Honestly, that was literally it. I can't describe that enough. Like, the whole time, literally, that's Batman. Now I'm watching Batman. Not once not once did I go, that's Robert Pattinson pretending to be Batman. I was like, no, that's just Batman. Also, I think his suit did the best job as well. I know it's not the performance, but the suit did the best job at hiding who it is, I think, as well. I think this is the least obvious where who's playing it. If I did not know Robert Pattinson was Batman in this film, somebody handed me a photo, or even a clip of the film where he's in full Batman gear with the Batman voice and all of that, and it's a scene of him as Batman, I would not guess that it was Robert Pattinson at all. That's how good he is, that's how good the suit is at disguising who he is, and I can't commend that enough. I was never against Robert Pattinson's casting. Obviously, I was tremendously disappointed that Ben Affleck was no longer going to be Batman, and it was no longer going to be his film, and everything was going to shit with the DCEU. Obviously, I was really disappointed with that. But I was, okay, I won't take that out on whoever they cast next. There was a lot of names being chucked around. There was Josh Brolin, who apparently had originally been offered the role and turned it down. There was, I think Jake Gyllenhaal was like another big name that people wanted. And there was lots of people who will be the next Batman. And I remember going on my phone, I think it was on Facebook that I went on to, and it was like a Lad Bible post, Robert Pattinson will be the next Batman. And I was like, alright, yeah. I did not have a problem with it. I thought it was funny, not because of him being cast. I just thought it was going to be absolutely fucking hilarious, the internet's reaction to him being cast. Because the second I saw that, I was like, that's not going to go down well. I had no problem with it, and I always, look, because I am not one of those people who go, you cast him, he's shit, he's going to be shit. What do you mean you cast her as this? She's going to be shit. What the fuck are you doing? Because what is the point in that? Because then you're just going to be wrong. Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger, why would you cast Heath Ledger as the Joker? What the fuck is wrong with you? Why would you cast that blonde pretty boy as the Joker? What the fuck? Dark Knight's considered by many to be the best comic book film of all time. He's considered to be the best comic book villain of all time, and he was the first actor to, and until recently, was the only actor to win an Oscar for playing a comic book character, and even then, the second person to win an Oscar for playing a comic book character played the same character. So, Walking Phoenix as a Joker, again, why would you want to cast Walking Phoenix as a Joker? Won an Oscar, again. So, there's no point complaining, because you're always, 9 times out of 10 you're going to be wrong, and I actually tend to think sometimes when people get really excited over somebody's casting, it doesn't always tend to go so well. So, yeah, I was not against Robert Pattinson being cast as Batman. I was not against that. I thought it was going to be absolutely fucking funny for the internet's reaction, and it was. It was exactly what I thought it was going to be. What, Twilight Boy is Batman? Why would you cast Twilight Boy as Batman? And all the memes and all of this shit. And there was the one that I did find quite funny of his head imposed on a picture of Adam West Batman, and Taylor Lautner's head imposed over Robin. I can't remember who played Robin in the old Batman series. I put the name there. But I thought that was funny, but I was not against his casting, and I am glad I did not take that stance, because holy fucking shit is he brilliant as Batman. He is fantastic. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. He is fantastic as Batman. There's so many brilliant things they do with his character. Like, his entire demeanour is that of a sad person, but somebody who's like trying to hide his sadness into what he's doing. And obviously that is the sadness of losing his parents, and what he's doing is being Batman. And you can really tell that with his performance. You can really tell he's quite socially awkward, not in a nerdy, nervous way, but he sort of like doesn't really interact with people very well, or he's really focused on what he's doing. He doesn't really have much time for human emotion, how things might affect people, and he just says things how it is. And I love that side of it, because it does show that he's on a completely different level. Like, when I say level of people, I don't necessarily mean he's better or worse than them, and I mean he is better than most people in this film, in terms of most people in this film are shitheads, in terms of the characters, but he's not thinking and viewing things the same way other people might. He's just viewing things as how it is, how it needs to be done, this is what we need to do, and this is how we solve this problem. And I like that side of it, I really do. He is, however though, and this is not a criticism of his performance, but it's hard to gauge what he's like as this, because in this film, obviously when you play Batman, there's 3 things you need to play. You need to play Bruce Wayne as Bruce Wayne when he's with Alfred in his Batcave, and that's how Bruce Wayne actually is. You've got to play him as Batman, because obviously it's a Batman film and you need to get that bit right, obviously. But also Bruce Wayne, there's the playboy millionaire, I'm better than I'm really cool, look at me, I'm drunk all the time. Side of Bruce Wayne, which is public persona. They don't do that in this film. And because of that, you've only got, I'm Bruce Wayne and I don't like anybody, or I'm Batman and I'm Batman. So he's more sociably outgoing and interacting with people. And then when he's Batman, when he's Bruce Wayne, he didn't really talk to anybody. He's just sort of standing there looking at people, because there's that funeral scene which was online. And obviously if you watch the film, you know what I'm talking about as well. He just sort of looks around the room. And so even when he is Bruce Wayne, he's still Batman, he's still calculating. The things he does as Bruce Wayne are to enhance or to, make the job as Batman easier. He's still going as Batman. And that's sort of like Ben Affleck in Batman v Superman. Like, he goes to the Lex Luthor party, the fundraiser, and even though he's still, in that film, they do play up the playboy billionaire side of things, he's going to get information on Lex Luthor, so he's still going to drive the Batman side of things forwards. And this is very similar to that, where everything Bruce Wayne does in this film as Bruce Wayne is basically, he's still doing it as Batman because he's doing to help the whole Batman side of things. But other than, that's not a criticism, it's just hard to tell, and I wonder if they will do it in future, because obviously it is a big side of it. It's how people don't know he's Batman because they write him off as a dickhead. Although I do think that they might not think Bruce Wayne is... Because I saw Jeremy Johns' review and he's like, they would spot him out immediately. I don't necessarily agree, because I think this goes to the opposite, where people assume he's just a lone, sad, like, doesn't talk to anybody, hates everyone, is a depressant. And might not think, oh yeah, that's who Batman would be. That guy who just keeps to himself, has got a bit of an emo thing going on, he wouldn't be Batman. And I could see why that logic would work, because like, you wouldn't necessarily think... You know, because you look at billionaires now, they aren't all Donald Trumps who go around, like, with women under their arms, they go in by helicopter, look how cool I am. A lot of them are socially awkward, nervous people, and I think Bruce Wayne, this is the Bruce Wayne persona that this one has. It's a more modern take on Bruce Wayne, and if they just stick with that and they never do the party playboy side of things, that's fair enough. Although if they do go to do that side of it as well, that will be quite interesting to see, because I want to see how Robert Pattinson plays that side of Bruce Wayne. So that would be interesting to see. Either way, I'm happy with him as both as Bruce Wayne and as Batman as it is. This Batman has a great relationship with Alfred, although he never really says anything nice to him, ever. It's a very on-edge relationship, and I feel like I can say that without spoiling it, because they've said that in interviews. Andy Serkis is great as Alfred. He is certainly an Alfred who doesn't know how to interact with Bruce. This is definitely the most uncomfortable relationship they've had, because Michael Caine was very supportive, he was very caring, and he only ever... there were times when they fell out, but it was still over Bruce's safety and interest. It's just they were on different sides of what Bruce Wayne should do. They weren't agreeing. They didn't see the same. They didn't have the same, point of view on it. They didn't see eye to eye on how to deal with the situation. But it was still over care over Bruce. Jeremy Irons' Alfred was just fed up of Batman. He was just like, yeah, just whatever. Even you got too old to die young, but not for lack of trying. Or I hope the next generation of Waynes won't inherit an empty wine cellar. Not like there's going to be a next generation. It's just things like that. He's just fed up of him. He's like, yeah, whatever. I'm done arguing with you. Whatever. And obviously the Michael Gough Alfred was just sort of like your granddad. So it was great as Alfred, but you get what I'm trying to say. Whereas this version, he's certainly like trying to reach out to him, and Bruce is just sort of like, no, fuck off, go away. The best way I'd actually put this film, in terms of if I was to compare something, imagine the scene between Uncle Ben and Peter Parker in Spider-Man, the first one with Tobey Maguire, when he's like trying to give him the speech, and it's when he goes, with great power comes great responsibility, and Tobey Maguire's like, just stop giving me advice, you're not my dad, leave me alone. That is sort of how I would do that. Not as stroppy in a teenage way, but Bruce Wayne just is not interested. He does not care what Alfred has to say about anything really in this film. He doesn't, unless it's to help him be Batman and help him solve the problem. He doesn't give a fuck. He's just like, Alfred, shut up. I don't care. Just go away. Just leave me alone. And Alfred is like, you've got to do other things other than Beavis. You can't just Beavis all the time. There was in the trailer, if you keep doing this, there won't be long until you have nothing left. And you do feel like that a bit with this Batman. You can tell he's so focused on doing this, and everything he does is around doing this. It's either he's out being Batman, or he's in the Batcave doing the sort of like solving things, working things out, designing new suit, like working on his suit, working on his car, working on his bike. He's just always being Batman. There isn't any time of his life where he's Bruce Wayne. Even when he is going out and being Bruce Wayne, it's to further Batman's goal. So it was interesting to see that. It was a very interesting dynamic. It feels like the best way I put their relationship is basically a dad who wants to be a dad to his son. He just doesn't know how to interact with him. He doesn't know how to... He's not fully sure that what his son's doing is the right thing to do. And even though he wants to be supportive, he's like, this isn't really any good, so you should probably stop. And then obviously getting more aggravated as he just falls further and further into this. But Andy Serkis was really good. I'm really happy with his casting. I thought it was great casting. He's less Grandad Butler sort of guy, and you can tell he's like, yes, this guy definitely looks like he's ex-SAS, ex-Special Forces. He does come across like that. He is sort of what I would picture the older Batman from Gotham to sort of be, albeit less confident in what Bruce is doing, because the Alfred and Gotham did start warming up to what Bruce Wayne was doing, whereas this version you can tell is like, no, this is, what the fuck are you even attempting to do at this point? Albeit he does help him, because you can tell he sort of thinks that the best way to help Bruce is to maintain an interest, because if he just dismisses him and keeps telling him he's wrong, then Bruce Wayne will reject him, and Alfred won't be able to help him in any way. So he's like, I will meet you midway, because I still want to be supportive. I want you to know I am here. I want to help you. I don't want to abandon you. I don't want you to think I don't care. So he does help him, albeit you can tell he doesn't really want to as such. But it certainly was a very interesting Bruce Wayne-Alfred relationship. Very unique, very different to the ones previous. And Andy Serkis was really good as Alfred J. Pennyworth. Zoe Kravitz as Selina Kyle Catwoman. I don't want to go so much into the relationship that she has with Batman in this film and how she interacts with everyone else, because I feel like that will be getting into spoiler territory. However, she is my favourite Catwoman now. So Zoe Kravitz, Selina Kyle Catwoman, is my favourite. She plays it so well. She has such a good... her and Batman have I don't like... Relationship's not a spoiler, but I mean in terms of they have a really good dynamic. It is my favourite dynamic. She feels very involved in the story, because obviously with Anne Hathaway... Imagine Anne Hathaway Catwoman, but like throughout the whole film, where they have this... So, you know when they go in the tunnel... Sorry, Dark Knight Rises, they go in the tunnels. Minor spoilers of Dark Knight Rises, by the way. If you really don't want to know, here we go. But when they're like going into the tunnels and they're sort of working together, and at the end of the film, when they're working together, it's like that, but throughout the whole film. And that was really cool to see how she interacts with the other characters that live in Gotham City and are part of this world. Is also really cool to see. That is unique. So, yeah, I feel bad that I can't talk about her much, considering how good she is. And she definitely deserves me to go on a bit of a rant about how good she is, like I have with the other two. But unfortunately, there isn't so much I can say without it becoming a spoiler thing. But imagine like the big rant I just gave the other two. I'm going to have an imaginary one about Catwoman. Because Zoe Kravitz was really good. And her dynamic in the film, her place in the film, how she enhances the story, how she's the character is, you know, in the film. You know, how it's so integral to the DNA of this film is fantastic. I thought she was brilliant. I thought the character was really well written. I thought she definitely needed to be in the film. She definitely enhanced the film. And I'm so glad that they decided to put the character in the film, because the way they did it and the way the characters played was fantastic. So, that was great. Jeffrey Wright as Commissioner James Gordon. Yeah. Again, just great. I feel like I could literally just say, yeah, they're great, because they are great. Again, similar with Catwoman. Obviously, definitely not similar in terms of how they play out in the film itself. What I mean is, similar with Catwoman when it comes to the fact that how they do the dynamic between him and Batman's fantastic. This is definitely a very involved Gordon. This feels like the most involved Gordon has ever been. Obviously in The Dark Knight Rises, and even Batman Begins, Commissioner Gordon, or Gordon when he's not, because he wasn't Commissioner until The Dark Knight, he feels very integral to the plot in those films. He's there at the end fights, he's really big when it comes to the involvement. Whereas this, though, he's there for a lot of it. He's there for almost everything. Whenever Batman's Batman, Gordon's almost there as well. There are very few times where Batman's in full Batman gear where he's not with Gordon, or he hasn't just been with Gordon. He's not come from being with Gordon to go somewhere else. He is usually having had been going to see, or is with Gordon in this film, and Jeffrey Wright plays it so well. It's definitely a Gordon who is very mistrusting of the GCPD. He's very mistrusting of Gotham overall. You can definitely tell he's spent a lot of time with Batman. He's warming up to him, although he's still not sure what to make of this guy who he's known for 2 years and he doesn't know who he actually is. You can definitely tell he's a bit uncomfortable with that side of things, but he's very, very trusting of Batman. He trusts Batman in this film over his trust of the fellow police officers, so that was cool to see. He certainly he plays it as he's sort of like a war veteran. He's done this. He's been a cop for like 20-30 years, and he's starting to get a bit tired. But you can tell that he's not giving up. But he probably would have given up had Batman not come into it. You can definitely tell that he's looking at Batman as a sign that we're taking. This is going down the right road. We're getting things done now. Things are being solved. Problems are being, gotten rid of. We're making progress. The city is making progress with him. He feels like that sort of character. Whereas Batman is actually sort of looking at the city and Gordon and GCPD and the crime and things, and is like, there might not be any progress being made. He doesn't feel like. There are bits in this film, and I keep going back to Batman, where he doesn't feel like he's making any progress. He feels like it's been 2 years and things are actually getting worse. Which how that affects the story is also great, but it is a very interesting dynamic, and that you can definitely tell that Gordon looks up to Batman in this film as a thing that he's needed. He needs Batman. This city needs Batman. He's encouraging Batman. He's helping Batman. He's giving Batman, like, when I say backhanders, I don't mean with like money, but in terms of he's giving him information on the side, like, if we really wanted to find that out, you need to go to that place, but police couldn't get there without a warrant. You can definitely tell he's sort of giving Batman, he's telling Batman things which Batman needs to know to further his investigation, to further what he needs to do. And he's really helpful in that sense, and you can definitely tell he's for this and he feels like this is the right thing to do. And that was really cool, because when you look at Gotham, if you looked at real life and you thought, what, a guy dressed as a bat beating criminals up, why the hell would you want that? That's insane. But you look at Gotham, where half the police are corrupt, the other half are pretty much too scared shitless to do anything. There's organised crime everywhere. The politicians and things like that are corrupt as fuck. And everybody who's involved with the city in any official capacity are either scared or corrupt. Organised crime, like I said, rampant. And there's also just unorganised crime. There's gangs, muggers, looters, people who just cause crazy shit, rioting, things like that. You can definitely look, if you lived in that city, you would see why somebody like Batman is needed, and you would turn a blind eye to the problems that Batman causes, i.e. literally beating the shit out of people when he has no legal right to do so. You would turn a blind eye to that and actually encourage in further investigation. You'd want to be involved. You wouldn't want to just yes, you go do your own thing crazy, but you'd want him on your side. You'd want to work with him, because you would look at the state Gotham's in, why it's in this state, how internalised its problems are, and think, yes, this is needed, and you can definitely tell that's how they portray this version of Gordon. That was fabulous. Carmine Falcone, played by John Turturro. John Turturro gives a great performance. I'm so glad I've just watched John Turturro in a film recently where he's not a really loud, fucking crazy person like he was in the Transformers films and lots of comedy films he's done with like Adam Sandler and things like that. It is great to see him playing a character and playing the character properly, and he is good. And Carmine Falcone again is also very involved in this story, and I won't spoil anything. But you know, like how Carmine is, I don't want to say he's the most involved, because Carmine Falcone in Batman Begins, even though he was called Falcone, he was very involved with the story, because he's the one who sort of gave Batman the inspiration of becoming Batman, albeit unintentionally. So he's very involved in that film, but in this film as well, he's involved in it longer. He's very part of the plot itself. He's not just a thing to drive Batman forward. Albeit, again, Carmine Falcone, whichever way you want to say it, was also very involved in Batman Begins. This version is also very involved in this film. I don't know which, having thought about it, I don't know which one you could say is more involved, but this one feels more involved than the other one, just without really having to think about it. So, that was cool. Well, really cool. Colin Farrell's the Penguin. You didn't fucking see Colin Farrell in this at all. I didn't see Colin Farrell at all. I can see why Jeffrey Wright had a conversation with him. Didn't even fucking realise he was talking to Colin Farrell. Because, what the fuck, that ain't Colin Farrell. Unless, because he's also putting on a voice. He's putting on an accent. He sounds like he's very sort of New York American type gangster boss guy. And at no point did I see or hear or feel Colin Farrell from that. I felt like I was looking at Oswald Cobblepot, the Penguin, the second-hand man to Carmine Falcone, who's wanting to go up the ladder in the Gotham City underworld and become the big kingpin of it all. I definitely felt like I was just watching that guy. At no point did I feel like I was watching Colin Farrell, just like Ron Pattinson. Him and Ron Pattinson, at no point. Actually, I'm going to say this. I think this film does the best job out of all the Batman films at making me not see the actor or actress playing the character, only seeing the character. Regardless if they're my favourite or not, at no point did I was like, I'm seeing that actor, I'm seeing that actress as this or that. I was like, no, I'm just watching these characters. It felt like the Arkham games, but in live action. Because the Arkham games are animated and you've got voice actors, you just feel like you're watching the characters. At no point do you feel like you're watching a performance. And this feels like that, but actually in live action. And that is really cool. So yeah, Colin Farrell adds to that. He was fantastic as well as Penguin. Didn't see him at all as Colin Farrell. And he has a good amount of screen time. And how the character is integrated to the plot as well was also great. Every character who was in this film felt like they should have been in the film. And that is a massive achievement considering how many fucking characters are actually in this film. And I remember when people were being casted, they were like, this seems like way too many villain type characters, but actually in the film they all fit and they're all balanced and it all works. And I'm really impressed with how they achieved that and how well they achieved it. So he was great as well. Peter Starsgaard, he's good. He's not in the film. His character is he's the district attorney in this film. Not Phil Coulson. That's he works as S.H.I.E.L.D. in the Marvel universe. Oh fuck, I can't remember what the character's called. Give me a second, sorry. Gil Coulson, the district attorney for Gotham. He's not as integral to the film as a lot of the other characters, and he doesn't have as huge amount of screen time as a lot of the other people. But even then, in his scenes he is in, he is really good. He does a really good performance. I'm really glad he got to be in this film because he does play it so well. Also interesting how he's married to Maggie Gyllenhaal, who played Rachel, Batman's love interest in The Dark Knight. I think that's quite a nice little neat connection how he's now in this version. I do enjoy things like that. And he is good. his character is involved in the story, and his character does have a purpose. I know I just said he's not in it a huge amount. His character still has a purpose, especially as a DA, and he's part of like Riddler's big plan, which I won't spoil. But he is interesting, and does give a good performance, albeit he's just not in it as much as the other people who I've mentioned thus far. And of course, speaking of Riddler's plan, I've got to talk about the Riddler now. Paul Dano as the Riddler is basically the perfect villain for this film. The character itself is, like what Matt Reeves said, he has a sort of Zodiac feel to him. He's like the Zodiac killer. He does have a very serial killer sort of nature. He's not like the Jim Carrey, really loud, really riddle me this, riddle me that, spandex wearing, sort of like when he's dancing around the Batcave blowing shit up. It's nothing like that. He really does have more like a serial killer vibe. If I was to compare him to another film character, Jigsaw does come to mind with some of the traps sort of things he sets, but he's more manic than Jigsaw, I would say. So, without spoiling, going into what exactly he's like, but I would say it is a bit more like that. I'm just going to adjust that a little bit, sorry. Anyway, he is a bit more psychotic than Jigsaw in terms of outgoing, because obviously Jigsaw in Saw films is fucking nuts, but you know what I mean. He comes across more insane in general. He also, like, his suit as well is really good. His costume, his mask, his leather, his baggy coat, his gloves, everything about him is very sort of like what a serial killer would want to look like if he wanted to make a statement, but B, also not leave any DNA or reveal his identity or anything like that. So it is a very good design like that, and again, like his character, like the way he does things, it is very based off the Zodiac Killer. So that's quite an interesting thing. Paul Dano plays the character really well. Now, I haven't watched Paul Dano in many things. Off the top of my head, the only thing I know that I've watched him in is actually Prisoners, which I think is an absolutely fantastic film, and you should definitely watch that film if you haven't already. I'll actually review that one day, just a little recommendation there. But he is so good as the character. I can't criticise it really. It does get a bit. He is loud, I would say. He is a very loud character, but he plays it well, and he's written well. The way he fits into the story is good. His plan's good, because obviously, as you can see from the trailer, he's targeting officials of Gotham City, so that's a very interesting thing, and Batman's trying to catch him, but also figure out why he's doing it, what the motive is, and also go along with what's happening, find things out for himself. It's a trident of a problem, so that's a really unique thing, and I enjoyed that the film took it in this direction. I enjoy how he chases Batman on a string, he keeps Batman going on a string. He's looking for him. Batman's looking for him, and the Riddler knows it, and it's a really unique thing to watch. He just doesn't come across like a comic book villain. He does come across like a serial killer in a detective film or a horror film or something like that. He doesn't come across as like a comic book villain with this end the world motive, or I want this and that. He's just this. He's a serial killer trying to uncover something and prove something, make a statement, and it is a really cool thing that this film did, and it adds to the dark tone of the overall film. And I did really enjoy Paul Dano's performance as it as well, because obviously you can write a character really well, but if the character's played poorly, then it doesn't really matter as much in the end. But if the character's played really well but written poorly, that can also just derail the whole thing anyway. But because it works both ways, this is a really good performance. It's a really good villain overall, but it's a really good villain for this film. And you can definitely see why he would be the main villain of this film. He does feel like a big enough threat for that to be the case. He does feel like at this point in time, he's like the biggest thing Batman has come across. So it was really cool. It was really cool to see the Riddler in a really scary light in live action. He wasn't annoying like he is in the Arkham games, where you're just like, I just want you to shut the fuck up. it was literally the perfect balance of all things, and I really enjoyed that. And I do hope that if the Schumacher cut of Batman Forever comes out, even though obviously the overall plot and motive will still be the same and what his plan is, I do hope Jim Carrey's Riddler in the original darker cut would have more elements of things like this, and I do think it would, because there's still a little bit of a hint of the Jim Carrey type of Riddler in this. But when I say hint, I mean like how loud he is. I don't mean in the really over the top way. But he actually wears the same glasses, I believe. There's a little Easter egg detail thing for you. But yes, it is a really good performance, and the character's a great villain. And I would praise it. I do think they made the right choice, actually, with the Riddler being the main villain in this first instalment. So I can see why they did it. So yeah, he's a great villain for this film, and he's a great villain overall. So this actually is filmed the day after what I have already just filmed, because I got really, really tired and I couldn't film anymore because I was actually about to literally fall asleep. So yeah. Anyway, I would carry on normal. That's just why I've changed the shirt and things like that. Although same hoodie, and just so you, because I love this hoodie, but just so you know, actually, I will be ordering. I know this is Zack Snyder's Justice League hoodie, and I feel a bit, even though that is my favourite film and things like that, and I love the Snyderverse and Zack Snyder, my favourite director, I do feel a bit odd wearing this in The Batman review, and I've actually ordered a The Batman hoodie, so hopefully it will have arrived by the time I start doing the spoiler part of this, the spoiler video. So yes, I'll be happy about that. Anyway, also today's actually the day that Zack Snyder's Justice League was released, the 1 year anniversary. Unfortunately, I can't watch it today as much as I would like to, but I'm actually going to watch The Batman again today with someone else, so that's cool. I don't think I've done that before, where I've watched the film again mid-review. I'm not sure. Either way, probably have. But that'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing it again. We won't really change this because I've already made up my mind on what I think of the film as a whole. Just wanted to say that. So the rest of the video might even be filmed after that. I don't know. Anyway, continuing on with the video. I love the tone of the film. The tone of this film is perfect. It doesn't feel like a comic book film. It doesn't feel like a superhero film, or at least not since the popular, what is a typical superhero film now, like what the MCU have set out. It does not feel like that at all, and it doesn't play out like one. It doesn't have the structure of one, I would say, either. It feels a lot more like a David Fincher detective film. So you got Seven, or Zodiac, things like that. It feels like that, or Denis Villeneuve's, I hope I'm saying that right, Prisoners. It feels a lot like that, which is actually quite cool as well, because Paul Dano, who was in Prisoners, is in this as well, and he's great in both. So it does build up that, and the feel of this film's great. It has a really dark, gritty noir feel to it. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't feel like a comic book film. It feels more of a detective story, more of a thriller film, more of an action horror thriller type thing. So I would compare it to things more like, instead of comparing it to things like Iron Man and Spider-Man and Captain America and all those films, it feels more like a Silence of the Lambs, or like I said, mentioned Seven, Zodiac, Prisoners. It feels more like that sort of film. So that's quite a unique thing, especially for a comic book film. Imagine Rorschach's section of Watchmen. A lot of it feels like that in terms of its tone. And I love how that sort of works within this film, how they've gone for that side of it. Because obviously the Batman in the comic books is the world's greatest detective. And although you have seen hints of that in The Dark Knight and Batman v Superman, where he's doing investigations and he's working things out and he's doing tests and there's elements of things like that, you've never seen it fully realised. And that's not a criticism on those films, it's just that's not what they were going for, that's not what those films are about. Whereas this is what this film is about. And it does that really in a brilliant way, and it's really cool to actually finally see that side of Batman where he's doing that sort of thing. And everybody has their unique feel in the film, everyone from Batman to Riddler to the side characters. They all have a unique feel. And one thing which Chris Stuckman pointed out, and I wouldn't necessarily have thought of it until he pointed it out, and even though I don't always agree with him, this was a good point. is they give Batman really heavy footsteps in this film. You actually hear him sometimes before you see him, like when he's coming out of shadows and things like that. That's a really good idea, because that gives it the more, like, the urban myth. Gotham is terrified, the Gotham City criminals are terrified of this guy. And it gives it more of that sort of feel, and I love that choice. I wouldn't have thought to do that if I was making a Batman film, and that was just such a unique thing that Matt Reeves decided to do, and just goes to show why he did such a good job with this film, deserves to have been able to do this film, and deserves to do more, because he's clearly got a unique take on what to do with this character, and all the styles and ways to portray and show what this character's like, and how this universe, this franchise, this particular world they live in view him. And I like that. I thought that was a good idea. So yeah, with the whole detective side of the film, the feel of it, and also feels like a graphic novel as well. It looks like a graphic novel. It's very beautiful in terms of how it's shot. It looks immaculate. There's so many shots in this film which would make a good, painting or a picture. It looks like a graphic novel. It looks really well planned out. It looks drawn, but in live action, it looks so well crafted. And I love, it enhances the feel. So it feels like a detective film, detective graphic novel, and I just love the overall tone and feel of this film. And speaking of the tone, the level of scariness this film has is also perfect. Yes, they could have gone darker if they wanted to, gone R-rated in America because it's PG-13 over there, it's a 15 here, or even gone 18, but I think that the problem is when you start doing that, as cool as that could be for certain things, you might start losing people a bit. Doesn't mean they shouldn't do an R-rated one, doesn't mean it couldn't have been more violent had they gone for that, it doesn't mean there couldn't have been some more things, but considering what is in this film, there's sex references, drug references, a lot of violence, horror elements, there's certainly a lot of kill count in this film, and a lot of threat, a lot of danger, a lot of what young people, they would say inappropriate for young children. There's a lot of things like that in this film, and I think it did. Even though it could have gone more had they wanted to, I think it is still a perfect balance for the film they made and put out in cinemas. I do think it did. It didn't feel cut back. It didn't feel like it was going too much either for the sake of being edgy, which, like, the Hellboy reboot felt like, where it was just like, this is just lots of gore and violence and swearing for the sake of being, look how hardcore we are. Whereas this doesn't feel like it's doing that. It feels genuine. It feels like it belongs in this story, in this world, in this thing they've created. It fits it and it enhances what they're trying to do. So that was cool. I enjoyed that. And like I said, with things like, the Hellboy films, the original two Guillermo del Toro films, did a better job at toning down the violence from the comic books. And then the reboot did with being more comic book accurate with its violence. It's just that it felt really played up, like they were doing it over the top for the sake of being like, look how, badass and violent we are. Whereas this film doesn't feel like that. Yes, Batman films have been toned down for violence, and yes, they do sometimes feel overly toned down. Even though this is not the darkest it could have been, because obviously you look at some of the Batman storylines, like with Joker cutting his face off and then stitching it back to his face and cutting off the Bat family's faces and putting them in a soup bowl in front of them and things like that. Obviously, this film does not go to that level, because otherwise it would be an 18, it would be an R rating, and it would be things like, there would be probably a lot of controversy over as well if they started doing things like that, because a lot of parents would complain, because parents, can't take responsibility for their own actions as a parent anymore. It's always somebody else's fault. But it certainly feels more like it's going in that direction, and that was so cool. It was such a good feel for the film. The new world overall is brilliant, and what I mean by that is because obviously this is a Batman reboot. This is a new universe. This is a new franchise. So everything's new. It's not just like a new actor, or they've not just replaced Batman and everybody else is the same. It's not a prequel to anything. So it's, even though it's got an all new cast, it's still a part of a pre-existing storyline. It's not that, because it's all a completely new world. Obviously, everything is built from the ground up. Gotham feels fantastic. This is Gotham in this film, I would say, has a bigger is like a bigger character than Gotham has ever been. It feels like a character in this film. The only one I can think of really is like Batman Begins. So if you look at the, if you watch Batman Begins and you look at the Narrows and this really grim place where everything's violent and scary, basically all of Gotham feels like that in this film. And there's a lot of beautiful architecture. It's a very gothic, expensively looking city in terms of... Sorry, my camera just cut out on me saying the memory card was full. Sorry about that. Anyway, I don't know when to cut off, so I'll just say like how everything in Gotham looks really expensively built, and everything looks really well designed. And that it was filmed in Liverpool in the United Kingdom, so I'm guessing that's probably why. With that, because there's quite a lot of nice buildings there, but they did like a really good job at making everything look like it's really well built. But it's all gone to shit. It's all graffitied. It's all worn down looking. It's all the paint. If there's paint on the building, it's all faded. Everything looks like it's weather beaten. It's been used and abused by everyone who lives there. Criminals have just trashed everything. It was a really cool, unique look. It looks very detailed, this city, and that was really cool. And it's always at night as well, which I appreciate. Well, mostly at night. I would say 90% of this film is set at night. So that also helped with how everything looks. All the night lights and all the night, every light is like orange, so it just looks really sort of Halloweenish, and I love that aspect. The bat suit in this film's really cool. The way it's designed, it's very padded. It's very armoured, and you see that in the trailer that he takes like direct gunshots quite frequently. I loved how it shows that to show that he's like not as confident. He's more aware people will just shoot him in this, and I did like that, and I like how it looks. I like the cowl, I like the cape, I like the suit as well, I like the symbol, I love the whole way it's designed. I thought was a really cool look. The Batmobile in this film's great. It's certainly the least extravagant Batmobile. It's very basic. It's basically an armoured muscle car with a jet rocket on the back of it, and it's got like a supercharger and things like that. That is cool. And it all looks very homemade, and I like that because he's obviously not trusting anybody else other than Alfred, who he is. So he's not going to Wayne Enterprises and he hasn't got like Lucius Fox who's like, yes, Mr. Wayne, I will give you just whatever you want. He hasn't got that, so he's having to just make everything himself, and it looks homemade. But even though it's homemade looking, it still looks effective, it still looks scary, and it's the most scary it's been, I would say, any of the Batmobiles, the suit or anything like that's ever been presented. He does feel like the urban myth, the Batman. Oh God, well, don't go out at night, don't do this, don't do that, otherwise the Bat will get you. He does look like that, it does feel like that. Everything about it feels like it has that presence, and I love how everything looks. The Batcave is cool. It's a old underground subway station. Thought that was a unique take on it, and I enjoyed that. It's a very realistic and grounded approach. Again, it's very sort of like, I'm keeping it basic. Selina Kyle's suit again obviously is the skin tight leather cat suit, like to be a cat burglar, but still, the mask is just like a balaclava on her head. So again, it has this homemade feel to it. Paul Dano's, I mentioned it Paul Dano's Riddler, I mentioned that when I talked about his character. That all feels, again, homemade but scary and effective. Everything in this film, the whole design, the world building, all the places, the locations, the design of everything, the way everything looks, the way everything feels, the way it's all presented, it works, and it is a really good sort of look for everything, design of everything, and this new world, this new universe, which is going to be the place of multiple films and spin-offs and things like that. That's cool, and I certainly enjoy the overall feel of it so far, and I hope it continues to feel like this. And if it changes, I hope it's to make things progress, or it's to suit what story's being told at that moment. So I'm certainly excited to see more of this world that has been presented in this film. Speaking of the Batmobile, this film has a great Batmobile chase. It feels very practical. I know a lot of it was practical, including the getting launched out the explosion, which was in the trailer, when Penguin's like, I got you, and he jumps out, the car gets launched out the fire, and he lands I love how the suspension goes down instead of just like landing perfectly. The Batmobile, the suspension dips and the car springs back up. I love that. But the whole chase scene feels very practical. It was very cool to watch. The action overall is really cool. It's very heavy hitting. It feels, all the punches that Batman gives somebody, it looks like he's actually punching them and it feels like it hurts. It doesn't feel like very slow, sort of looks like he's not actually hitting anything. It's quite quick. It's very brutal. It's very sort of like what you'd expect the vigilante to have to do. None of it is on the level with the warehouse scene from BVS, but it's heading towards that in terms of how brutal it feels and how, like, when Batman hits somebody, you actually feel like he's just hit them as hard as he could at the moment, or at least hard enough to, you know, incapacitate them without actually, you know, killing them. So I like that. I certainly think, I don't want to say could use improvement, because that's not the right word I would use, but what I mean is I feel like the character could use improvement in terms of, you can tell he's still early days with the way he fights people, how many people he takes on at a time, how he takes them on, things like that. So I certainly feel like there's more they could do there, and there isn't a huge amount of action in this film compared to some others. It's not like the action-driven, super cool, like, look at this, lots of action Batman film. It is more detective noir feel, but that having said, there is quite a bit of action. There is enough action in this film, just, you know, for it to be serviceable and feel like it doesn't drag. It doesn't feel like there's not enough action. It doesn't feel like, okay, but when's Batman actually going to punch somebody? It doesn't feel like that. There certainly is enough action in this film for it to be satisfied if that's what you'd really want from this film, and it is well enough executed where you're entertained by it, and how brutal it feels and how heavy it feels, and the way Batman just doesn't really have any mercy for anybody when it comes to how he fights them. That's cool. So yeah, the action in this film's really cool. Although a lot of it is Batman. There isn't a lot from anybody else other than Batman. I know you could go, well, it's the Batman, but what I mean is there isn't really any action set pieces for the villains or Catwoman or things like that. Most of the action in this film is entirely from Batman's perspective. And even though you could view it as a little bit of a letdown when you compare it to like the opening of The Dark Knight, which is a great thing which Batman's not part of, it still works. It is still cool. And the whole film's basically from Batman's perspective anyway. I don't think, this is a bit like Joker. I might be wrong, but I don't think there are any scenes in this film where Batman's not present for them. It's all from Batman's perspective. There isn't like The Dark Knight where there's a scene with the Joker and someone else, or a lot of superhero films where there's a scene with the villains and someone else, or the side characters. It's all from Batman's perspective. If Batman's not in this scene, it's not a scene. So, you know, you could argue that's a little bit disappointing if you want to see other people do things as well. But obviously it's called The Batman. It's about Batman's detective story going into the underworld of Gotham to solve this whole thing. So it makes sense for it to be from his perspective. And certainly the action that is shown in this film is really cool. So this bit of the video is filmed after having gone and watched it again this evening. Again, loved it, really enjoyed it, and will be watching it again when it comes out on disc and HBO Max and things like that. So you know, looking forward to then. But I've watched it again, also really enjoyed it. This one little negative though, just quickly as well, I just realised upon another rewatch, is that there's a bit in the film where there's a little bit of a continuity error, and I won't spoil it, I won't ruin it, but it just bothers me a little bit. But anyway, it's just that little thing. But yes, so to go with the whole tone of the world building and everything like that, the score for this film by Michael Giacchino is also brilliant. Now obviously with the scores with Batman, that's quite a really hard thing to get on at least level with, because obviously you have the really famous one by Danny Elfman, which was used in the first two Michael Keaton Batman films, and even though I hate his view on superhero themes, which I personally just believe is driven by his ego, and even though I certainly don't think his theme would have suited the other films, unlike what he seems to believe, obviously that is a very good theme. It's a very famous theme and it deserves the praise it gets. Hans Zimmer's theme for the Dark Knight trilogy is also obviously brilliant and widely recognised as one of the best themes for a superhero film or superhero franchise, for the right reason as well. And then of course you've got Hans Zimmer and Junkie XL's work on Batman v Superman for Batman, and Junkie XL's work for Batman on Zack Snyder's Justice League. So obviously you've got a lot of competition there. And even though, like, I don't want to say which one's my favourite, because it's hard to tell which one's my favourite, because they're all different and they're all for very different purposes, this one is brilliant and suits this. The theme for this film, the music for this film, suits this, is as good for this film as the other themes are for the other films, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. Batman's main theme, which I'm sure you have heard by now, because it was all over the internet even before the film came out. Brilliant for the character. It is sad, in parts of the music are sad, but then it obviously has that really dramatic build up, which is just so elevating and so cool and sort of sinister as well, which is great for a Batman theme, to have a bit of a sinister element to it, because obviously he's meant to be quite a scary character, especially, you know, for the criminals, so that was cool. Catwoman's theme is very good. It feels a bit James Bondish, like it belongs to a Bond girl, but I can still see why they went with that sort of theme, and I thought that was a good choice. The music throughout the whole film, like the chase scene music, the action scene music and things like that, they were also good and elevated each sequence and made everything feel even more thought out, more planned, and you got more immersed in it and more engrossed. And you know, if it was an action scene, you got more excited, especially when it was the Batmobile chase scene, because the theme for that was really good. But no matter what the music was for, what the scene was, it enhanced the scene, it enhanced whatever it was trying to go for at that moment, and that is obviously the whole point of a score. So when a score can do that, obviously the score is doing its job, and also the score for this theme is also memorable. Sorry, the score for this film is also memorable, so that's all a win for this music, and Michael Giacchino deserves a huge pat on the back, and he's done such a good job that not only has he created a good theme, but he's created a theme which stands up there with the rest of them, and I can see why they went with him, and he deserves a lot of praise. So that's all great. Honestly, it just adds to like the whole thing of why this film is, you know, so brilliantly put together, and why this film feels so unique, and its existence is justified, and just basically how creative and genius the whole thing was, really. Though perhaps not as emotionally investing as something like Batman Begins or The Dark Knight, this film does have quite a few emotional moments, some very sweet character moments, and even sad character moments, and you do feel it. As I said, it doesn't really top anything in The Dark Knight, because The Dark Knight, without spoiling The Dark Knight in case you haven't watched it, took a lot of risks with what it did. Batman Begins is a very emotional origin story, with some of the best callbacks to scenes I've ever seen, like how it calls back on earlier moments in the film. Some of the best versions of that I've ever seen in any film ever. Probably the best. Yeah, I'll go with the best, actually. And even The Dark Knight Rises is an emotional conclusion to the trilogy. So even though this film might not be on that level, there are still very sweet moments in this film. There are still some moments which make me quite sad. There's some moments where it does feel really heartfelt between, you know, two characters. Alfred and Bruce have quite a few good moments. So do Catwoman and Batman. So that's all really nice to see. There isn't much outside of like Batman again. Because every scene is evolved around Batman. Batman's in every scene. There isn't much between like two other people other than Batman. It's all very focused on his relationship with people. There isn't like really much of that person, next person, that person, and this person. It's all pretty much just. But as you know, I think of it, there are a few scenes in this film which Batman's not in, but they're very few. There's probably 3 or 4 scenes. One's the opening, like the opening actually. I don't know why I said that. I don't know why it's taken me that long to remember Batman was not in the very first few minutes of this film, without spoiling anything. And there are a couple moments, but it's literally, I would say, out of the almost 3 hours this film is, Batman's not in each scene for like 3 minutes. That's how much Batman's in the film and how much it's all on him. So because of that, basically all the emotional things are between Batman and that character, Batman and that character, Batman and that character. There isn't that character and that character, that character and that character. It's basically just Batman's interactions with people. But they're still good, they're still investing, and there's quite a few emotional moments and some definitely dramatic moments which I won't spoil, but that's really good. And although maybe not as much as other films, it does stand really well on with that. And it was nice to have moments like that, because then you can't go, well, this film's just, you know, violent, dark, detective noir. You don't really care about anything, because the film does make sure you do care about the characters as well, opposed to just being invested in the plot of the film. It does make you invested in the characters as well. And obviously, if you want your film to all round be pretty solid in terms of in every aspect, especially from a script point of view, that's obviously an important thing to do. So deserves, you know, quite a bit of praise for that as well. That I actually managed to basically, even though there's certainly elements of this film which are stronger than other elements, there aren't any real weak elements in this film. So that's impressive to be able to do, to give basically the whole film an overall strong structure from every aspect. So that was cool. And even, look, this is the thing, there might be better Batman films, and what I mean by that is you might say Batman Begins is a better film than this film. You might say The Dark Knight is a better film than this film. You might even say The Dark Knight Rises is a better film than this film. Depends what your point of view is, because some people don't like those films, some people adore those films. I'm one of the people who absolutely adore those films. It just depends what your opinion is. However, in my opinion, even though those films are probably better films, this is the best Batman film. This is the best film from a Batman standpoint. From a purely, if you're just going to look at the character that is Batman, I would say this is the best Batman film. It does the lore best. It does the fear element of Batman best. It does the detective side of Batman best. Out of the Batman films, so excluding films with Batman in, like Batman v Superman and Zack Snyder's Justice League, the action in this film is the best out of any Batman film, Batman solo film. Although The Dark Knight does have my favourite chase sequence out of any Batman film, with the whole hit me bit, you know, that whole sequence. I won't, without spoiling again, sorry, just in case you haven't watched it. I don't know why you haven't, but anyway. The big chase sequences that is still my favourite out of any Batman film, but this is the chase sequence in this is much more fast-paced, heavy, dramatic, very sort of tense in that moment. I thought the build-up for the one in Dark Knight was better, and the stakes of it and everything like that. But the actual chase in this film itself and the way it's shot is brilliant. And the chase scene, I will actually just say quickly, I don't know why I didn't mention it, what I love about that is the Batmobile feels like a character. You get a lot of shots from like the tyres point of view, and that I love that. I love that choice. That is something I would have loved if I was making a Batman film. I'd think, yes, that's a really cool thing to do, because it's such a great look, and it's so cool to actually be sort of seeing everything from the Batmobile's point of view and actually following it, sort of like if it's a bit of a 3D or 4D ride. I did enjoy that. So yeah, I do think this film is the best Batman film. Again, Batman Begins might be a better origin story, it might be in a more emotional Batman film, but I just think in terms of the detective side of it, the scary side of it, the Gotham side of it, the brutality side of it, watching Batman walk around in terms of the way he interacts with other people, because this feels like a very lived-in world. This feels like a live-action Arkham game. It feels like a world that's lived in. It's not set things up. Everything's established. This film jumps to it where Batman's been Batman for 2 years. Gotham's been Gotham for however old Gotham is. I don't know exactly how old it is in this universe. I don't know if they've kept it comic book accurate or not. Either way, and everything obviously feels set up. It's like, because obviously the criminals have been there longer than Batman's been there. Penguin's been there longer than Batman has. Carmine Falcone has been there longer than Batman has. So the world feels established. It feels, but it doesn't feel like you're missing anything either. So that's important, and that's a good aspect. Would this film have been weaker had there not been any Batman film beforehand? Probably, because you wouldn't have known as much. But from the way this film sets up and the way it deals with everything, and though yes, you could argue it might rely on that side of things a little bit too much, it suits this film, it suits the story. It doesn't waste time trying to re-establish everything, and the world feels lived in. But because of the fact the world feels lived in and everything feels established, you then realise Batman is fighting more of an uphill battle. He's not fighting a villain who's been a villain less time than he has been Batman over the same amount of time. He's come into a situation that's been going on for 2-3 decades. So obviously that helps the whole detection side of things, and Batman trying to solve the problem, and Batman interrogating people, and people, should they be scared of him, should they take him seriously, or is he just a guy just as a bat and they don't give a fuck? I love that, just the lore, the world that this character lives in, and the way this film deals with everything makes this purely the best Batman film from a comic book film standpoint, and I will honestly admit that. It really does capture the darkness of the character, the darkness of the world the character lives in, and the lore and the world building, everything around him, not just him, and because of that, that is just why I am saying it's the best Batman film. From a Batman film perspective, from an emotional Batman film perspective, I still think The Dark Knight's the best, and from a storytelling perspective, The Dark Knight's probably also still the best, but, with Batman Begins as well. Although, like I said, just from a purely making it feel like a comic book, making it feel like a graphic novel on screen, making it feel like a purely fan, yeah, this is really cool, this is the best Batman film. Also, one last positive before I end the video, and this is non-spoiler, the opening of this film is great. I don't just mean the very first scene, because that's also cool, but I mean the whole first 10 minutes of this film, without spoiling anything, is absolutely incredible. I do think The Dark Knight's still my favourite opening, but this is right up there. It's so cool. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed everything about it, but I won't spoil any of it. All I'll just say is it's so fucking good, and everything about it is so well executed, and I absolutely fucking love it. Anyway, sorry about this video. I could go on and on, because I love this film, and I know this video is going to be really long, especially for a non-spoiler review. But fucking hell, what my spoiler review is going to be, spoiler review / talk is going to be like, fuck knows. But anyway, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry it's taken so long, but I will edit this as quick as I can, because I do want to get it up on my channel. But yeah, thank you again for watching. I hope you enjoyed the film. If you have watched it, if you haven't watched it, do go watch it. For film quality, I'm gonna give it. What am I going to give it? I think I'm going to give it a solid 9.25 out of 10. I do think it is that good. I really did enjoy it that much. I'm going to give it a 9.25 out of 10. And from an entertainment standpoint, I am going to give it a 9.75 out of 10. So that's my score for this film. Anyway, again guys, thank you for watching this video. I have it uploaded as soon as I can. And that's also a note to self, Jack, as well. Do get this uploaded as quick as you can. But yes, thank you guys again for watching. I hope to see you in my next video, which will be the spoiler talk for this film. And then I'm not sure what my video after that will be, but I hope to see you in that one as well. So yes, thank you guys for watching. Goodbye.